In this video, I'll be showing you how to use a color wheel to better understand the science and the art of color theory, and how that understanding can help to make your paintings sing. Stick around to the end because there's a bonus. Hi, I'm Marilyn. Welcome back. Have you ever wondered why someone would bother to use a color wheel, or for that matter, how they use it? Well, in this lesson, we're going to focus on those questions and more as we look at basic color theory and how a color wheel can be the tool for translating that theory into action. And I'm going to share 3 things that work for me when it comes to choosing and using colors, and maybe they'll work for you as well. To quote one of my favorite artist authors, Nita Leland, if you don't understand color, it's like a traveler leaving home without their luggage, and sooner or later you're going to have to go back and get it if you want to go very far. As soon as we hear the word theory, many of us think of long, boring lectures or big, heavy books full of dry and tedious information. So why color theory when all I want to do is make art? Well, maybe some of my true confessions will sound familiar to you. I've actually started work on a painting, only to realize I had absolutely no idea which colors I wanted to use or even should be using. I've also made more than my fair share of color mud by mixing colors that should never have been allowed to play together. I've also spent a lot of money buying more tubes of paint. Surely if I had more shades of green or red or blue, I'd have the final answer to putting the magic in my paintings. And I've invested precious time in a painting only to get finished and realize it was rather lifeless and dull. Some of my mistakes were expensive, most were just frustrating. Enter color theory. Graphic designer offers this definition. Color theory is both the science and the art of using color. It's not just about which colors look good together, and that's important. It's not just about which colors mix well with each other, and that's really important if you are a watercolorist. But it's also about the effect of different colors on the viewer, the messages that colors communicate. We want people to look at our art. We want people to feel something when they look at our art. Again, from Nita Leland, values and shapes make contact with the intellect. Color touches the heart. The color wheel is the tool we use to help us put color theory into action. It works because it helps us see relationships across colors and how they interact with each other. Here's how it works. Primary colors are the first colors that we identify on a color wheel: yellow, red, and blue. Those colors cannot be mixed from any other colors, hence the name primary. The next level of color are the secondary colors. Secondary colors are the result of combining 2 primaries. So when we put yellow and blue together, we get green. When we put red and yellow together, we get orange. Right? Red and blue together, we get violet. Tertiary colors are the result of combining a primary and a secondary color. So for example, yellow and green would give us yellow-green, or red and violet would give us red-violet. The tertiary color names on the color wheel are descriptive. In other words, you probably don't have a tube of paint labeled red-violet, but you might very well have a tube of paint labeled magenta or rose. There are 5 color schemes that we can find using the color wheel. Actually, there are more, but we're just going to stick to 5. The first is complementary. Complementary color schemes are when there are 2 colors opposite each other on the color wheel. Side by side in a piece of art, these colors create an energy or a vibrancy that can be very exciting. So think purple and yellow, or blue and orange, green and red. You have to be careful about mixing complementary colors because they will result in they neutralize each other and you can get mud pretty quickly. However, you might want mud. Think about how much fun you could have mixing complementary colors to see how many different shades and values of browns and grays you could get. The next color scheme is analogous. Analogous color schemes are when we have 3 to 4 colors sitting side by side in the color wheel. Analogous color schemes are often found in nature. They're harmonious, very pleasing to the eye. We just want to make sure in an analogous color scheme that we pay attention to values so that it doesn't get boring. We want to make sure that we get some real dark darks and some real light lights to kind of balance out that the harmoniousness of an analogous color scheme. Next is monochromatic. Monochromatic is when we take one color or hue and paint our entire piece of art with that one color. It requires using that color from its darkest value to its lightest value. And oftentimes artists will add a pop of white to make sure that there's some sparkle, to make sure that there's a full range of values. Next are split complements. And a split complementary color scheme means we look at the color opposite and pick the colors on either side of the complement. This is a good choice for beginners. It still has that great contrast of a complementary color scheme, but it's not quite as tension-filled. If you think red, blue-green, yellow-green, that's a lovely combination for a painting, or yellow, blue-violet, and red-violet. Last but not least is a triad. Triad means we have 3 colors that are equally spaced on the color wheel. Think primaries. Our primary colors form a triad. The 3 secondary colors form a triad. It doesn't matter where we start as long as we're looking at equal spaces between each of the colors. Those are 5 basic color schemes that we can use to jumpstart our paintings and to think about as we plan for what's going to happen in our artwork and what kind of message we want to send to our viewer. Here's how I use a color wheel to translate color theory into color action. I have learned that the better I understand color, the better decisions I can make about the colors that I use in my art. I do not want to be the traveler that left their luggage at home. I've listed these ideas in the description below, but let me share with you some things that seem to work for me. The first thing is I might create a page in a sketchbook where I play around with different colors for a different purpose. In this case, I was thinking about reds and blues that would make some interesting shadow colors. Or I might be experimenting with 3 primaries just to see the different colors that I could mix from that collection. Another thing that I find really helpful is to take all my paint and sort them into primaries. So I might have a pile of blue, a pile of yellow, a pile of red. And it's really interesting to see what you have in your paint drawer when it just comes to your primary colors. Then you might go through what's in that drawer and add in secondaries that you have. Now, what's interesting to me when I look at my collection is I have very few secondaries because I like to mix them from my primary colors. The secondaries that I do have, I consider convenience colors, something that I might need quick and I don't want to spend the time mixing it. Another thing that you can do that's fun to play with color is to make color charts. I have a paint chip for each of the colors in the drawer. I'm kind of interested in whether it is opaque or transparent, what the pigment is, who's the manufacturer. Sometimes I do it this way where I have all my reds, all my yellows, all my blues, and it just gives me a way to kind of understand what those relationships are. But my favorite kind of color chart to make is this. This is the collection of paint in a small travel palette, and it's amazing that the number of colors you can get just by mixing. I recently bought Joy Moon's Perfect 12 and made this color chart just to show the range of colors that you can get from 12 tubes of paint. So that's a great way to get to know your colors better. Another thing that you might do is make a painting with just one color. I have a small painting at the Guild in the gift shop that I did all with cobalt blue. And it was kind of fun to see how dark could I go, how light could I go. And interestingly enough, even though it's a tree and it's blue, everybody knows it's a tree, so that's a good thing. Play around with mixing 3 primaries and see the different colors that you can get. Think about a mood that you want to create and experiment with the colors on your palette and think about where they fit on the color wheel and what kind of mood they might create for your viewer. So those are just some of the ways that I like to play with color. The second way I use the color wheel to get from theory to action is to have a color plan. So what I try to do is decide when I have something I want to paint, what is the dominant color? So in this case, in the tulips, the dominant color is the yellow of the blossoms. Now I have some decisions to make. If I use a complementary color scheme, I'll have yellow with violet, which is pretty exciting. Or I could have an analogous color scheme where I used shades of yellow, green, and blue-green. In the end, I decided to go for drama, and I created a deep, deep violet that I think kind of makes the tulips pop. But it's about having a plan before you get started. I have lots of pictures of flamingos and I'm always wanting to paint them, but again, I had to think, first of all, the dominant color is this orangey pink of the flamingo, and then I have a decision to make. In this case, I was playing around with, do I want a complementary color scheme in which green and blue-green would kind of be the background and make that flamingo pop. In the end, I decided to go with a more analogous color scheme where I used shades of yellow, pink, and red-orange to kind of create a feeling for that. It's about choosing colors and having a plan that you've developed on purpose, not by accident. The third thing I do to translate theory into action is to invest in a palette that mirrors the color wheel. This is a Quiller 12 travel palette. I just love it. I got it very recently, and I like that it designates where the primaries are, and then I can add my secondaries and my tertiary colors, which is great. It keeps me honest about where things are and the relationships across the colors. If you're a watercolorist like me, sometimes palettes with too many wells make for too many choices, and it becomes, I'm really choosing colors by accident instead of on purpose. So think about investing in a palette that mirrors the color wheel. I promised you a bonus, didn't I? If you'd like to know how to make a 16-page sketchbook from one sheet of watercolor paper, check the link in the description below. This is a great sketchbook for color experiments. Because you're using good paper, you can paint on both sides of the paper. And when it's full, you just cut up another sheet of paper and add more pages. The link is in the description below. Give it a go. That's it for this lesson. I hope you learned something, and I hope that this review of basic color theory was helpful to you and some of the lessons I've learned about how to put color theory into color action. Next episode, we're going to look at how to make 4 accordion sketchbooks from one sheet of watercolor paper. So please subscribe. See you next time. Thanks for watching.